Well, it's another year in the books, and Stay the Water is turning 3 years old. I can't believe it. We bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community. We've been doing it for 3 years, and we can't do it without you. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille. Stay tuned as we review our third year show anniversary. Welcome back. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille. We're so happy that you're joining us once again on this Sunday, as you always do, as we broadcast from the campus of the Norfolk State University from none other than WNSB Hot 91, the soul of VA. You know, we have in our studio with us who we've had in the studio since day one, our producer, none other than Marvin Folks, also known as DJ Scandalous, which you can hear every Monday through Friday from 2 to 6 p.m. on Saturdays, and yes, on Sunday, because he's the hardest working man in radio. And look, we can't do it without you. I always like to recognize you, our supporters, and some of the greatest alumni and supporters here in the Spartan Nation, none other than those here at Norfolk State University. You know, this is an exciting show that I love to do every year. And I say love to do every year because I'm fortunate and truly blessed by God to be able to do it. This marks the third year since Stay the Water has been on the air consistently. Every Sunday, we've been talking about bringing movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss important issues about the community. You know, not only that, but we also, it's really a blessing just to bring individuals who are making decisions in our lives every single day, but we bring them to you to discuss it. You know, many times, Marvin, we see commercials, we see elected officials and business persons come to our communities and tell us pretty much what they're going to do for us. You know, but I envision a different type of conversation. As part of the Center for African American Public Policy here at Norfolk State University, which I served as the former director and the first director of the center, you know, the idea was to, hey, let's, instead of a top-down approach, let's do a bottom-up approach. In other words, instead of having individuals come to us and tell us what they're going to do, not only that, we want to bring the policymakers, the movers and shakers to you so that you can express your thoughts and we can also express the issues that are going on in the community. You know, Marvin, you've been with me since day one.
Day one.
And, you know, I remember us in the former radio station. You know, it was a very small space. And if those of you that can see us, and of course, I think there are clips online.
Oh, yeah, plenty of them.
But we've got it's a small company, but, you know, that was our training ground, you know, there.
I like that.
You know, there was a time where, you know, we were learning about the community was learning about us, and we actually helped each other grow as well.
That's right. I mean, hey, you've been a big brother to me, a mentor, and you know, when I first started, working with you and producing the show, it was July 2020, around this time. And I had just got my bachelor's in information technology right here from Norfolk State. And that fall of 2020, I started my master's in cybersecurity. So the entire time from, you know, completing my degree and then starting the master's, you know, I've been here with you since then. Now I'm working on my PhD.
Yes.
And you've helped me tremendously from writing recommendations for me for some of the paid internships I've done, all the way to getting into the PhD program I'm in now, right, in computer science. So, yeah, man, it's been a blessing, and it's been 3 years have gone by so fast, man. You know, I'm a music guy and I'm a tech guy. I've never really known too much about politics, but working with you now, you know, I've done town halls. I was, one of the graduate ambassadors for the Senate debate that was here at Norfolk State. So I've learned a lot about politics, man. It's been a great journey, and happy to see it continue.
Well, look, I've also learned a lot about you in radio. You know, a lot of people don't know, but, you know, you had a music career outside of here where you worked with one of the best and Hall of Fame producers.
That's right.
You know, in the music industry. And you can tell them who it is if you know.
Oh, yes, for sure. From the age of 13 all the way till now. But for sure, all of my teenage years, I was mentored by Teddy Riley. And that was like you said, the station was our training ground. Me being with Teddy, my entire pretty much middle school all the way through I graduated high school was my training ground before I kind of flew off on my own, and my parents were my managers and stuff like that. And then I performed on 106 in Park and went on tour and all those things that, good things that I was able to do with the music industry. And then, times changed and I started school non-traditionally late at the age of 25. And so from the age of 25 all the way till now, 2014, and now I'm coming up on 10 years of being in school nonstop. So, being around a professor, an administrator, an advisor such as yourself has helped me through the journey. So these 3 years have been very special and very developmental for me.
Absolutely. Well, as the word says, iron sharper than iron. So, it's God's plan to put us together, and we're continuing this journey. And not just learning about each other and learning from each other in the studio, but the growth of the show. We've seen ourselves go from the old studio to where we are now, a $1.7 million, facility here, a radio station where you can, a traditional radio that you're listening to us on, our streaming app that some are listening to us across the world on our TuneIn app. We can podcast from here. It's just so much that has taken place here on this campus and in this jewel of WNSB Hot 81, the soul of VA.
Yes.
So I tell everybody, they ask, how do you like it there in Norfolk State? How are things going? I say, I love it because not only allows me the opportunity to do everything I love, but it also gives me the facilities to do everything that I love. So I count myself to be fortunate and blessed, number one, grateful and truly humbled to come on air every week to talk about these important issues that are important to the community, and not just the community, but to the Commonwealth and to the future of our society, our children. When we talk about the different types of things that shows and that we do, we just don't pull these things out of the air. There's research that goes into these shows every single week. We research articles. We look at the climate of the community. We look at the climate of the state and the country and also the world because it impacts us here. So whatever's happening in Washington, D.C., whatever's happening in Richmond, whatever's happening in City Hall in Norfolk, it affects us here, right here off of this on this street. Yep. It affects us in our homes. It affects us, in our jobs. So we think it's important and it's vital for us to really talk about and bring these issues to you, the community. It's Stay the Water. I'm your host, Dr. Eric LaVille. Today we are celebrating our 3rd year anniversary of this show. It was created to bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community. What is the state of the water? What is the state of the community? What's the state of the Commonwealth? The idea behind the state is to highlight what is and what also can be. So when we talk about the state of the water, it's just not the state of just water out there, because we're surrounded by water here in Norfolk, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. But it's the state of the legislature. It's the state of the community leaders. It's the state of the business leaders. It's the state of the business community. It's the state of our educational system. And yes, it's also the state of this great institution, Norfolk State University. So with that, I thought it was great to create these series that we actually do here on the show. So those of you that are faithful listeners of the show know that we have various series that we actually do. Now, we also do timely things. So if there's something that's happening now, we break to it and we cover that issue. Then we come right back to it. Case in point, just this past month, we celebrated the independence of African Americans here in our country. So every year we do a Juneteenth celebration show. And it's to recognize, number one, to celebrate the achievements of our people, but also to recognize where we've come from and where we have to go. So this year we were able to have, my good friend, Brother Nathan, who is Mr. Frederick Douglass. And Brother Nathan, he also does, he's a great historian, wealth of knowledge. And we had a great discussion with him to talk about Juneteenth. Marvin, when we did the show about Juneteenth, what were some things that you learned from that particular show?
Well, of course, I learned that, African Americans, we weren't free, of course, until the soldiers came down and announced it. It was in Texas, right?
Absolutely.
And, a lot of people don't know that. We celebrate, other holidays, but they don't know that the real holiday of our independence and our freedom was Juneteenth. And
right.
For me, it's a reminder, because, we're used to certain customs and doing certain things routinely every year. And some things you just don't really think about, but some things need to be thought about. They need to be spoken about, and they need to be remembered. Mm-hmm. And Juneteenth is one of those. So that's something that I keep close to me as a reminder, as well as it becoming a federal holiday.
That's right.
And actually, I know some of the people that, started that right here in Virginia, to get it nationally recognized. They signed a petition and had a lot of people. Well, they started a petition and got a lot of people to sign it. And then, of course, it went to Governor Northam at the time. Mm-hmm. And then it spread it, So in Virginia,
Absolutely.
just like what Nate Parker said, it was the birth of a nation.
Absolutely.
So we're still birthing a lot of things right here in Virginia.
Absolutely. Some other timely topics that we also did. We also do our graduation show every year. Like I said, we're fortunate to broadcast on this phenomenal campus of the Norfolk State University and at this radio station. So every year we take a look at Norfolk State University and highlight the graduates of this institution. Having the ability to be on stage, with the university administration. Those of you know that I do work for the greatest president in the land, as Dr. J.
Dr. J.
As we affectionately call her, President Adams-Gaston. But being able to be on that stage every year, to see the graduates walk across to get their degrees, knowing that we change their lives just by being here, pouring into them. Again, it's our annual We See the Future in You show. And we highlight some of our phenomenal graduates. As a matter of fact, this year, we highlighted as our special guest, Mr. Jalen Jury, who's a former NSU SGA president and current Chev board co-chair for the student division. A phenomenal young man and an example of what we produce here at Norfolk State.
That's right.
So hats off to him and all the great things that he's doing and all of the graduates. But also, another special topic that we did is this year we highlighted financial literacy to talk about, again, the state of finances. So not just the state of, of African Americans with Juneteenth, the state of the university during graduation and commencement time, but the state of finances. Marvin, finance is very important.
It is. I know a lot of times we would like to feel like, living is just free, but, unfortunately it is, but it's not. So, finances and all around, whether it's in education,
That's
whether
right.
it's in business or anything, it's important. You have to have some. So
Absolutely. As the word says, money answereth all things.
There we go.
So this year we were able to have my good friend Yvonne T. Allman, Executive Vice President for Community Engagement at Town Bank, a great supporter of the community. She talked about Town Bank's community financial literacy program. It's something that she's very passionate about. And I love bringing people on and, well, just in general. I love looking at people, listening to individuals, whether they be professors, whether they be intellectuals, whether they be CEOs, whether they be artists, athletes. I love people that are passionate about what they do.
That's right.
It's something about being passionate about what you do. You pour everything into it. Of course, with athletes, we look at people like, either LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, those individuals, or, Tom Brady, someone that poured and sacrificed a lot into the career. Or we look at CEOs of companies. We look at Bill Gates and what he created with Microsoft, and many, many others. Well, whether it be Tyler Perry with movies, how he's passionate about it. It's something about people and passion that brings out, I think, the best in all of us. So, again, Yvonne is definitely one of those that's passionate about financial literacy. Her career and her service that she's given to the community definitely pours into what we are doing here today. We also, in April, we also talked about Easter. In our Easter Sunday, we highlighted the importance of Easter in the Black community itself, and also the state of Easter here in our community. And it's not about a religious show, but it's about the impact that our relationship, in the Black community plays that we have connection with God. When we talk about, our community, the African American community, church is deep, is deeply rooted. Our religion is deeply rooted in who we are, and it's part of our identity. So the state of the church, the state of religion and the community connected, and how it plays a part, in our development as a whole. And then those are the special topics that we like to do and that we have done just this year in the last several months. But I want to go back to our series. I mentioned, those of you that listen to the show, we do what we call our series of shows that we have here. And one of the last series that we had was a review and a preview of the Virginia primary elections. Now, every year there's an important election here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, right? Yeah, I know people get tired of hearing it. Like, this is an important election. It's like, we're voting again. But
again,
I know. And guess what? We're going to vote again. This year. We voted in June, and then we're going to vote again in November.
Wow.
But these elections are very important.
Yeah, these are important ones.
Absolutely. But every election is important. But this is a very important.
It's local.
It's local. It's local and statewide, because all politics is local, according to Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, the late Kofi Annan, whom I had a chance to meet when I was in undergrad at the UN. So with that, we previewed in our series the June primaries here in the Commonwealth. So all 140 seats of the General Assembly is up for election. Absolutely. All 40 seats of the Senate in the Virginia Senate and all 100 seats of the General Assembly here in Virginia are up for really. Absolutely. And with that, we actually had a very competitive races here because of redistricting here in Hampton Roads. And we see after that election, the power stayed in Hampton Roads in the legislature. That is amazing, because not just the power in Hampton Roads, this region, but also history in this region. If all things hold, we could very well have the very first African-American Black male Speaker of the House here out of Hampton Roads. And also in the Senate, the most senior state senator, who is currently President Pro Tem, and also a graduate and alum of Norfolk State in the Senate. So we see in Hampton Roads, we could have literally the two most powerful people in the House and the Senate, all from here, all African-American, and all supporters, and one graduate of this great institution. So understanding the power and the implications of that election and this primary, not just in Hampton Roads, but across the state, is imperative. So that's why we do that show. Now, so we were able to have candidates on the show. We actually previewed some candidates as well. And to be also fair in our coverage, we make sure that in the show leading up to the primary, I actually do a comparison and also outline the candidates, not so much a comparison, but outline the candidates based upon their stances, based upon their reports that they've given, and based upon their website and literature. So I do that to give you, the voter, the opportunity to voice your opinion, because we're not here to influence what you think by saying that you should do this. We're not here to dictate what you think, but we're here to give you all the facts so that you can make up your mind and make the best informed decision that you believe is best for your community. That's true education, right? So with that, we were able to have Angela Graves Williams, who is actually Angela Williams Graves, who is actually the now Senate candidate for the Democratic Party for the Senate seat here in Norfolk. The very first time the city of Norfolk will have a state senator encompassing the city of Norfolk. So that is huge because of redistricting. Also, we were able to have Delegate Nadarius Clark, who was on the show as well, to talk about, being able to run in a new district, because he had to resign his district and run into a new district as well. So those shows were very important. And we were also able to highlight what took place after. So we did the pre-primary show series, and we did the post to find out who actually won that particular race. And even before that, we're not all about politics. We're not all about policy, but we're all about movers and shakers as well. So we have our Community Impact Series. In our Community Impact Series, we like to highlight individuals that are doing great things in our community for us. So one thing I was fortunate enough to do, and really honored to be able to bring to the listeners, we were able to highlight one of the organizations that make an indelible impact in the community. And that's none other than the Norfolk Alumni Chapter of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, which is my fraternity and also my chapter. And I was fortunate enough to have our pole mark, Brother Timothy Lamb, in the studio to talk about, what Kappa does for the community. So that show was entitled For the Good of Kappa. Fraternities, of course, we know that there are social organizations within the university and sororities, but they do more than just the social part on college campuses, but also they impact the community. So we were able to highlight a lot of things that we were doing and still do as far as the community goes in helping individuals that are impacted by natural disasters. We were also able to participate in helping to feed individuals and families during the holidays. But one of our major initiatives is our Kappa League and what we do under our Save the Youth Foundation for a Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated Norfolk Alumni Chapter. And with that, we're able to impact children, able to impact our youth, especially our black males, to go from boys to men. And it's that mentorship that makes the difference in our community. As also part of our series, we were also able to highlight in the legislature. Now, again, going back to policy, and politics. In our, here in the Commonwealth, of course, with the wisdom of our founders and Thomas Jefferson and those who are the bedrocks of our democracy, Virginia and the General Assembly, whether it be the House of Burgess from the foundation of it to now, is really, I believe, the ideal picture of what democracy is supposed to be like. So with that, every January all the way to May, we have our General Assembly series. So with that, we highlight, number one, what's going on in the General Assembly. We look at the governor's initiatives and the governor's budget. We also look at what the Virginia Black Legislative Caucus, what their agenda is as well. And then we bring on the show to talk to you, the community, our legislators. Norfolk State is fortunate to have over about a half a dozen legislators serving both in the House and the Senate.
Wow.
That's right. And not just serving, but doing the good of the community in the legislature. And we are fortunate enough to have them on the show to discuss the great things that they're doing in the legislature, but also to inform us, the listeners, about what's coming down the pipe and how we can Be a part of the process.
Before it's even announced.
Before it's announced, and also not just before it's announced, but we also how to galvanize, how to become active. Voting is great, and we have to vote. It's imperative to vote. Make sure people have. I can't emphasize enough how our ancestors bled and died for our right to vote. We've got to make sure that we go out and vote every single election. But voting is just not enough. We got to make sure that we attend meetings. Got to make sure we listen to shows like Stay the Water.
You have to. It's a must. Every Sunday.
It's a must. And also, we can go a step further. You can listen to the Clavier Report, Law, Policy, and Politics at 12:30.
That's right.
That's on this station at WNSB Hot 91 Solar VA every Sunday. But you have to be able to be informed about what's happening in your community, because ultimately, once the law is passed, it goes into effect and it affects us, which is why we also do new laws that go into effect at the end of the legislative session. So we have that show at the first of July every year, because what happens is that inevitably there are laws that we don't know about. We're traveling, we're going 4th of July, Independence holiday, but there are laws that we need to know about, because ignorance of the law is no excuse. You will get that ticket. You will be subject to punishment under the law. So we're here to inform you and make sure that you are aware of what is going on in your community and across the board. You know, we also have our series where we have our federal election series, and a federal legislative series. So we have our federal officers on the show. This past year, we've had our very own U.S. Congressman Bobby Scott on the show in November. He talked about getting out the vote and voting in November, because, again, every year there's an important election here in the community, but here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. But not just getting out the vote and the importance of voting, but we also talk about, what our legislators are doing for us. And Congressman Scott is doing great things for us in the legislature every single year. One of the longest tenured U.S. congressman and the smartest U.S. congressman in Congress. And I'm just not saying that because he's my congressman, but I'm saying that because it is true. If people want to know something, they call Congressman Bobby Scott. But not just that, but we also have had our U.S. Senator Tim Kaine, Mark Warner on the show, and also former U.S. Congresswoman Elaine Luria. Marvin, there's so much that we've covered in the past year, and
3 years.
Absolutely. Even our Supreme Court review.
That's right.
We review the U.S. Supreme Court and the cases that are passed, because we know that the laws that are passed in D.C., on the court, especially now, impact our lives. So I just want to say thank you. First of all, I thank God for the opportunity. I'm humbled and grateful for him placing me here with you, and also here on this campus, in the station, and for you, the listeners. I'd like to thank you, the supporters, for listening to us every Sunday. And listen, without you, we couldn't do what we do. So as long as you support us, I'm going to still do what I do. So I want you to continue to tune in every Sunday at 10 a.m. here on WNSB Hot 91 Solar VA, as we broadcast live from the campus of the Norfolk State University, where we bring movers, shakers, and policymakers to you to discuss issues important to the community. I'm Dr. Clavier. As always, be good, be great, God bless, and we'll see you next week for another year.